Trashmaid is a wholesome, comedic, slice-of-life webcomic available on Tapas and Webtoons that was created in 2019 by a thing calling itself Sauce 2. And while I was told to ease up on the story because this is a visual analysis, I feel like the story is important for context and learning who's who, so I'm just gonna do a quick speed run real quick.
Speed run!
So the comic follows a mermaid named Tidy, who's living a simple life in a polluted ocean alongside her mermaid friend Neat, her dad, and occasionally this group of human-hating miscreants calling itself the Flames. Eventually she meets the human Ricky and his best friend Spencer, and the three of them often have wholesome adventures while Tidy gets a crash course on land water culture. Now, with that out of the way, I want to discuss what I think is probably one of the biggest sticking points of The Little Trashmaid. The comic contains pretty much no spoken words of dialogue from any characters. It is purely a visual comic. Okay, there's a spin-off book called Diving Deeper where the characters do talk, but for most of the regular webcomic, it's purely visual. And the thing with the purely visual is that it has to get across the characters and what they're all about, tell an engaging story, and keep itself funny and intriguing all the way through, again, without a single spoken word. Purely through visuals, and this is something that I think The Little Trashmaid does really well. Though, before we get to the big three on the checklist, I feel like I should explain how it properly gets across its visuals. So, without any spoken words of dialogue, the viewer gets a sense of what's going on in the comic through the characters, the facial and body expressions that they make. And the comic makes sure every character is just as expressive to show you what they are, while keeping every single character unique from the other. From early in the comic's lifespan to late in the comic's lifespan, they knew how to make good expressive faces. Whether it be cute faces, funny faces, emotional faces, the artist knows how to make them expressive and charming. And the same is even applied to body expressions and how all the characters move. That does present a bit of a challenge when you're dealt with mermaid characters, but the artist manages to approach the topic well and creatively. The mermaid tails flow around in the water, just like how a graceful sea creature would. The comic also makes frequent uses of thought bubbles and speech bubbles to further display a character's thoughts or what's going on. And even then, these don't contain any words. They're all done through purely creative visual images. And these help you get an insight into the character's thought process and further establishes what their characters are. The comic also has a really good eye for small details. And this can either be a clever or funny gag, or help establish both the world and its characters. One big detail I didn't even notice the first time I saw it was with the flares and their names. Each one of them are named after 4 different types of screws. And while there is a separate information comic that tells you all these names, the first time you actually learn of these names in the comics is in one moment where Ricky and Spencer are at a hardware store, and then there's this background shot of a bunch of screws that seems unimportant, but then you go to the next panel where it shows all the characters, with all the screws lining up to what their names are. That was pretty clever. A lot of this is going to come up again multiple times, pretty much throughout the whole thing, so let's just hope I don't get redundant and move on to that checklist. Establish good characters, add charm and humor, and tell a story, all without a spoken word of dialogue. How does The Little Trashmaid pull this off? The webcomic does have its fair share of fun and likable characters. The main character, Tidy, for instance, is someone who's bright, curious, and always helpful, but isn't the smartest can in the six-pack. Though, the 2 characters I want to highlight are the 2 human characters, because they both have an interesting dynamic that the visuals get across pretty well. Ricky can be a bit of a jerk, who pranks others, and can appear a bit selfish at times, even if he doesn't have any malicious intentions. Not to mention he does get pretty angry at a lot of things, but he does show he can be nice and care for other people. He's shown to truly admire and care for his friends, especially Spencer, who he totally has a crush on. Spencer, meanwhile, is kind of the opposite character. He's calm, kind, and caring. Not afraid to show genuine concern for others, though he also isn't afraid to get mad sometimes. Mainly just as a means to reel in whenever Ricky's being dumb or too jerky. When events happen, you can always bet that Ricky will have some big angry reaction, while Spencer's going to be timid and off to the side. But one comic that shows their dynamic the best is the comic where they react to the pier that they hang out on getting destroyed. Both in different ways. Ricky is shown to be angry, mad, and skulking, meanwhile Spencer is out working hard to earn enough money so he and Ricky can help fix the pier. So one is mostly negative with hints of compassion, and the other one is mostly positive with hints of assertiveness, all clearly conveyed through their facial expressions. Purely through visuals, the comic shows these two as polar opposites, yet having a dynamic that makes them an engaging couple. Not only do the visuals tackle character dynamics, but also character arcs. Best example being what happens when the Flares member Torx gets injured. Tidy suggests asking Ricky and Spencer for help, but Torx doesn't want their help because they're humans, so he tries to get help from the Flares. But it becomes apparently clear to him that his friends aren't much help, as evident by this face. You might not be able to see it through much of the injury, but you can tell it's the face of God, all my friends are idiots. So he caves and eventually decides to ask the others. Then, after he does get help and he's healed, he essentially starts dismissive and ungrateful towards the humans, but after they're gone, he looks back feeling a bit sorry for himself. He even gets the gang to help do them a solid. Despite how much the Flares are against the Landwalkers, in this moment right here, you can tell that he has a bit of regrets on how he acted to the people who were kind and helped him out. Maybe this will be the start of them all realizing that humans aren't so bad after all. So the little Trashmaid has good characters, and the visuals makes them likable without them having to speak, so that's one part off. But there's another part that guarantees that the readers are going to come back for more. The humor in The Little Trashmaid is in more than just the characters making funny faces. The humor in The Little Trashmaid mainly comes from the subversive. When something happens, you think the characters are going to zig in one direction only for them to zag and do something completely different than what you think. Like when Tidy starts asking about lemons, and then Ricky goes and gives her a lemon, thinking she's gonna have a hilarious look on her face. Only for things to not go as planned, and now Tidy is all happy while Ricky is suffering. Some gags focus on Tidy's aforementioned not brightness. Like when Spencer starts asking if there's any other mermaids besides Tidy. So Tidy goes to see Neat, which is when we, the viewer of the comics, see Neat for the first time in the series. And you think she's going to introduce Ricky and Spencer to Neat, only to come back up with a bunch of Starbucks cups. And look at that face she's making right there. That smug grin is the grin of, did I do it or did I do it? And speaking of Neat, the first few comics after his introduction show him off as a sort of scared, cute little baby who's timid, shy, and nervous. Overall, an adorable little bean. So when Ricky and Spencer finally do meet him for the first time, and both them and the audience see that he has massive, sharp, scary shark fang teeth, it's kind of funny. The comic truly thrives on the unexpected and the viewer never knowing what they're gonna see next. Like one moment Spencer's talking about his skateboard injury. Tidy then pulls this terrified face and runs off from the group. She's swimming through this ocean with this panicked look on her face, and what does the audience see next? A lobster on a skateboard that Tidy tries to stop from hurting himself because he's on a skateboard. Underwater. Though the biggest source of gags in Little Trashmaid is the one aspect made apparent by its very own title. The one secret ingredient the comic has.
Trash!
The big central gag behind the whole series. The fact that Tidy is a mermaid living in a time when the ocean is full of plastic. A bit of a grim, sad reminder of the real world, yeah, but the comic goes about it in a way that's funny and charming. Pretty much the first thing you see up front is how the main character wears a plastic shopping bag as a t-shirt, and the funny thing is, they get a lot of mileage out of that gag. Her dad starts fishing for new tops out of the mouths of sea turtles who ate them. When Tidy gets stuck in a cage and her shirt rips, she fishes out a new shirt, one that just so happens to look like black and white prison scrubs with a price tag as a serial number. She finds an actual regular shirt, only to use it like a shopping bag while she uses the shopping bag as a shirt. Neat gets incredibly embarrassed about his neck scars and puts another bag over his head. Similar to the trope of the paper bag with eye holes over the head, only this bag has a logo on it that just so happens to look like the word ugly when upside down. Even the flares, with all their stylish matching gang outfits, those are mostly made out of garbage bags. There's even one moment where they use it to camouflage as random garbage bags, which is kinda cute and kinda cool. Though trash is used in a lot more ways than just fashion, it's used in a lot of ways. Tidy introduces herself by spelling her name out in discarded candy bar wrappers. She uses a trash bag like a sleeping bag. She uses clothespins like hair clips. One time, Tidy sees a deflated pool toy that's shaped like a dolphin, thinks of it as a dead animal, and then holds a funeral for it. Some characters even eat garbage. Don't do that, IRL. Very early on, there's a comic where Ricky asks if Tidy can sing, and so she does sing, and sings pretty well, only to get decked by a piece of trash out of nowhere. And a later comic shows that this is apparently a regular occurrence. Basically, Tidy is kind of like a Disney princess who bursts into song and then random forest animals show up. Only here, whenever Tidy sings, instead of animals, she summons even more garbage. So the comic is really funny, and it is really charming, and it has good characters, although what it's missing is the last thing on the checklist, structure.
Is it your mentality or merely just reality that what you said is factually wrong?
The story behind the little Trashmaid is fairly low key. As I said, it's a slice of life comic, which is often not really one big grand story and more like a few small stories of characters hanging out with other characters and just living in the moment. And the same goes for this comic too. Tidy, Ricky, and all their friends just hanging out with each other and living in the moment. Oftentimes, these moments are spread across multiple comics to help keep the snacky newspaper comic style consistent. I know I said I wasn't going to focus too much on the story, and this is visual, but look, to understand what I mean, I'm going to take one comic in particular and completely visually just analyze it. Just looking at what's right in front of me. It opens with Ricky angrily yelling at someone who we can't quite see. He is in a house, possibly his own house. Eventually, it cuts to him in his room, angrily packing a bunch of camping supplies into his backpack. Then he's at another house where a woman is having a speech bubble on how Spencer is sick. So that's most likely Spencer's house, and that's his mom. Eventually, Ricky is angrily, poutily walking around on the beach, setting up a sleeping bag to sleep there. He then gets disturbed by garbage, and then finds Tidy emptying out a trash bag so she can use it as a sleeping bag to sleep next to him with. Without dialogue, this comic starts giving us some food for thought into Ricky's background. The figure he was shouting at is potentially his parent or older sibling, giving us some ideas into why he's mostly negative. Maybe he doesn't have the best home life, and that's kind of why he's packing a bag, just to get away from it for a bit. And the reason he ended up going to Tidy's beach after Spencer was a no-go is probably because Tidy is his friend, and he associates that beach with good moments. And maybe I'm overthinking a little bit, but I'm noticing the small detail of how at Spencer's house, the backpack full of the camping equipment is out of sight of anyone at the door. Probably a stretch, but maybe there's something you could read into that. It still has good expressions that make you tell what the characters are feeling, and it ends on a slightly charming trash gag. All visuals, no dialogue, told a nice story. Here's another example of a visual story, told almost entirely through facial expressions. The players see a tomato left out of the pier, and the member Slot decides to come up and take a bite of one of them. He makes a disgusted face and then spits it out. The players swim away while giving that pier a spiteful side-eye. Then night falls and Slot comes back to eat the tomato again with an amazed look on his face like he actually enjoyed it and was just trying to make it look like he didn't. Slot then comes back to the pier to find even more tomatoes, and happily scarfs them all down with an adorable look on his face, only for the gang to walk in on him doing it. While they have a look like, bro, what's going on? And he has a look like, oh no, I messed up. But he still tries to save face by acting all like, no, I'm not having fun, they're attacking me. But then the other players swing into action and then go out swinging and break the pier. The players then smile at the broken pier, reveling in a job well done, while Slot's looking on like he's starting to realize that this lie has, not worked out well. The story of the Little Trashmaid can also be more than just cute and comedic. It can actually get pretty emotional at points, like the comics surrounding Tidy's dad losing his tail. Tidy is shown in earlier comics to have a really good relationship with her dad, so it's reasonable that this breaks her up. She even stops hanging out with Ricky and Spencer, who have gotten really concerned about not seeing her for a while and are missing her. And all her friends in the sea are trying to comfort her. They're concerned about her and want to cheer her up when Tidy herself is down and depressed. And she does sort of accept this attempted comfort, even by the people she's distanced herself away from. And I just want to give a mention to Tidy's face in this panel right over here. This panel shows up before you see what Tidy's sad about, or even know that she's sad in the first place. And I've recently noticed how subtly it leads to her being sad. The redness in her eyes and also the usual condensation from being submerged in water all the time, now looking like tears coming across her face. I like that detail. This all culminates in a comic where Ricky and Spencer are fixing up the pier after it's been smashed, whereupon Ricky sees something in the distance. Then he makes a look on his face like he's about to start crying, and then we see Tidy, finally deciding to say hi to the guys after so long. To which point, Ricky gets so happy to see her again that he literally dives into the ocean to hug her, which is pretty emotional for a mostly negative guy. The comic can be genuinely emotionally sweet, and all of this, again, is done without anybody having to talk. So the comic has good characters that are expressive without having them talk, makes charming and funny gags without having anyone talk, and tells a story without having anyone talk. That's everything on the checklist. Personally, I love the little Trashmaid comics. And the big reason why I love it is the purely visual aspects. The characters are great, cute, funny, and very expressive. It tells so many charming stories without them having to talk. It tells a lot of funny gags, all centered around the trash theme. Tidy and her friends have so many charming adventures together. And the art can sometimes be really pretty to look at. And the creativity is on full display in this comic. Really, there's no better way to say it than I love this trash.